Let's ask ourselves the question this morning, am I living life with a light touch? And today we're going to explore some ways that will assist us and help us in that process. One day, an oyster was just all along in the ocean, having the greatest time. It was a wonderful day. And all of a sudden, a grain of sand came into the shell, creating an irritation, moved it from its peace. And today we're going to talk some about, as we are living life, enjoying life, and experiencing the light touch of life, how we can stay at that place, even with some of the irritations, the distractions. Well, as you know, the oyster found a wonderful solution, secreting a material that over time created a magnificent pearl. And I believe it's a wonderful allegory for us in our lives as well. Because every time there is a distraction, an irritation, a frustration that keeps us from living and taking life and giving it a light touch, it will hold some greatness for us if we do not focus on that grain of sand or that irritation. It's important every day, putting God first. The scripture says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, with all your strength, and your neighbor as yourself. But it begins right here with us every day. And for me, every morning, it sets the tone of the day. That connection, the immediate awareness of our connection with the God of our being. That presence of peace, that presence of love. Yes, there's things that try to distract us. I will go to my phone to begin to pull in daily word. When all of a sudden, news briefing. I don't want to hear the news briefing. I just move it on quickly as I can. Putting all of the good into my mind and my thoughts, as I know many of you do as well. There was a father trying to finish a project, and his little child, this little girl, she kept coming in. Daddy, Daddy, come play with me. He said, no, I have a project. You go to your room and you go play. But she kept coming back and coming back. So he took a page out of the newspaper. It had a map on it. And he cut it in pieces. And he gave her a cardboard piece and told her to go to her room and put this together. And then he would have time with her. She went to her room. He thought this would take really a long time. But no. She put it back together and comes to show her dad. She's carrying the board. And she's so proud. She's so happy. He said, how did you do this? He said, she said to her dad, on the opposite side was a picture of a woman's face. So I laid all of that out and then turned it over and had the map. So it was a wonderful example for us sometimes of opportunity of seeing things a new way, from a new side, from a different perspective, that we can take life and enjoy life with that light touch. Have you ever gone into a business, or even if you spoke to someone on the phone and they weren't having a good day, you could recognize it in their voice? You can hear it. You can feel the energy, right? But sometimes if we ask them a question that we know it has to be a positive answer, it will move them. You can almost see a shift taking place within them. It will move them from whatever the distraction was right to that place. I was with one of those people this week, and this particular space had been redone. It was lovely. And I said to the person, "What do you see in that piece of art?" So it brought her into the present moment. She said, "Well, I see a wave, like a wave of the ocean." I said, "Well, I can see that too. I can see the waves." But I said, I see something else in this picture. I see an angel and the angel wings, and it's like the angel has somebody's back. And she just stopped and she looked. She said, I see it too. She said, "I'd never seen that before." I'm sharing it with you to say that when we are putting God first in our lives on a daily basis, we bring that presence with us wherever we are. If somebody's hurting, we recognize it. If somebody's in a rush, we recognize it. And sometimes Spirit will speak to give us something that we need to say, or something for us to do. A small thing can have a high impact in being God's ambassador in the world today. We have a little visitor. It's to get our attention. Have you ever had somebody to say to you, "Don't get your hopes up"? Many times through our lives that they may say, "Don't get your hopes up." Well, I'm telling you today, get your hopes up. It's time, because we know that God has only great things in store for our lives. And as we take a look at life and life events, we know from the Scripture that some way, somehow, that all things are working together for good. To those who love God, to those who are called according to His purpose. Sometimes we become distracted by the appearances. See beyond the appearances to see the good that God has in store for your life. The psalmist says in 23, verse 6, "Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever." When things are not going well in one's life, sometimes there's questioning. God, why now? Why me? Why this? Sometimes people become angry with God, frustrated. But David reminds us in this chapter that even when we face challenges, that God's greatest heart is to bless us with goodness and mercy, that we are all a part of God's family, of that household, and that His blessings will overtake any challenges of life that we may experience. Get your hopes up every morning when you get up. God, what great things are we going to do together today? How much fun are we going to have? Can we make a difference in somebody's life today? What is our purpose? What is our mission? We are our happiest when we're about the Father's business, our mother's business. And when we look back to the time of Jesus being 12 and being in the temple and the family can't find him, they're concerned. They're worried. Where is he? How could he do this? But here he is in the temple with the rabbis, listening, learning, growing, expanding. So it is our mission every day in our getting our hopes up that we can live our purpose in the world. And you know, we're supposed to have fun. Life is meant for us to have great fun, to have joy. And sometimes people ask, well, how can I do it with all these other things happening in life? It's a decision. It's a decision that we make every morning. We decide that we're going to have a wonderful day. We decide that we're going to be happy and joyous. And we decide that we're going to bring that to every person that we talk to. Because in a day's time, you may encounter 100 people or more. And out of all those people that you encounter, somebody is looking for something to hang on to. They're looking for strength and faith and hope. They need somebody to remind them to get their hopes up. And we can be that for those in our lives, but also to total strangers. Acknowledging others. Saying hello. Asking their name. And it's amazing the wonderful conversations you can have with total strangers every day. It doesn't have to be long, but it can be wonderful. And it's like God's love loving through us, loving others. Become comfortable with not knowing. Maybe this is one of the hardest things. What do you think? Become comfortable with not knowing. Who's coming? What time are they coming? Are they going to be on time? Are they going to have all the right equipment to do what needs to be done? How long am I going to be waiting on hold? Does the bank have my statement correct? All the many, many things. We want to know the answers. But you know, in the Old Testament, Jehoshaphat, he said, God, I don't know the answer. I don't know the answer. And sometimes that's the best place to be, because it helps us to be very open and receptive. And he said, I don't know the answer, but my eyes are upon you. That looking up in consciousness, knowing that the right and perfect answer will be revealed in its right and perfect time. And probably in some aspect of life, every one of you here today, there's things that you do not know the answer to. You don't know when you're going to get a bonus. You don't know when the house is going to sell. You don't know when you're going to meet that right and perfect companion. There's many unknowns. But we can be comfortable with not knowing, because when we recognize that God truly is our source of all good, and we're coming from that place, that our faith and our trust is in God. And that allows us to feel comfortable with not knowing, to continue to move forward, and sometimes out what people call the clear blue, a divine idea emerges. The answer comes. A person contacts you, and it's complete. But we will always be having that kind of experience, because there'll be times and places in our lives when and where we will not know the answer then. So, resting in the not knowing. Become comfortable in the not knowing. Be thankful for the not knowing yet. And rest in that place that God, you and I, we got this. And the answer is going to come. It will be revealed. No rush. All in God's timing. Be comfortable with not knowing. Cultivate a consciousness of God's presence within. Many of us came up with the idea that God is somewhere else, that God is out there. Well, God is out there, but God is also in here. And God is everywhere present. I say cultivate it. Have an awareness of that presence within. Spend time in the quietness every single day, because it's a part of cultivating that consciousness. Listening to the still small voice that comes from within you. No one has your answer for you except that spirit and presence and power within you will reveal it to you when the time is right. You know, we think back about my children, and when they were young, they loved all the little things that you could ride, you know, the tricycles and the Hot Wheels and the little cars. It was just so much fun. They just loved it. And they would have loved to have had a real car. But I knew at 6 and 7 and 8, it wouldn't have been a good thing yet. We couldn't give them everything that they wanted. The time wasn't right. Now, it's maybe our culture, society has helped us in wanting to have everything instantly. That we want things and we want it right now. But this cultivation of this consciousness of the presence of God within us moment to moment, it is a moment-to-moment work. And we are guided to the right place at the right time with the right people for whatever needs to take place. You are part of my story. I'm a part of your story. And sometimes I've been with different ones of you one-on-one, and an idea comes, and you just toss that idea out there. You have no idea why, but that piece of information, it might be very valuable to the other person. So pay attention when you feel directed inside yourself to speak, to be silent, to share, to call someone, to write a letter, to write a book, to write a song, whatever it is. Listen inside and follow that, because as we are cultivating this consciousness of this presence of God within, we will be asked to do something. We will be guided to do something. because we're all here, regardless of if you're retired, if you're in your career. You're here every day for a reason. You're here every day for a purpose. And every moment of every day that you let your light shine, it is radiating out to the human family. It's connecting in. The presence of God is within every person. Everybody, they do not realize that as yet. Our co-founder, Myrtle Fillmore, she related a story about her mother, and she said her mother was a very spiritual woman in a very traditional way. And Myrtle said she just couldn't accept the ideas that she was taught about God punishing people. And it propelled her to study and to learn and to grow herself and come into her own spirit of truth. The spiritual walk, it is an inside job. And she came to realize that God is love. Sometimes, though, we punish ourselves. Has it ever happened to you? We punish ourselves through our own thoughts or words or actions, but it's never intended for God to punish us, because God is love. Every day, the understanding, the seeing, the accepting it into our lives. Renew, release, let go. At the end of every day, we can't call the day back. Everything in life it's about forward movement. You can't, should have, done something. You can only do something. Renew yourself. Release attachment. And understand that every day is a brand new day. Some people think that holding on, hanging on, there are signs of strength. But sometimes it takes much more strength to know when to let go of things that no longer serve us. So today, we've talked about laying down your burdens, your distractions, to allow us all to live life with a light touch, to get our hopes up, knowing that the best is yet to come, individually and collectively. You ain't seen nothing yet. Become comfortable with not knowing. Rest at that place. And cultivate a consciousness of God's presence within. It will allow us to live life with the light touch. Affirmation. Together, I choose to give life the light touch. And so it is.